Today we're talking about water. Who doesn't love water, guys? I thought it would be a great video idea to explore the investment of water. Could we be running into a period of time where fresh water becomes more scarce? And if that's the case, do you want to be exposed to this asset? Before we do get into it, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube. Really appreciate your support. I'm also going to put a QR code down below for a Bitcoin tip. So if you want to support the channel, feel free to leave me a little tip. Now let's get into it. It's no secret that water is one of the most valuable resources in the world. We all need water to live, right? If you don't drink water, you're gonna run into some problems. And I actually think that water is the perfect example of supply and demand. Because when water is plentiful, when there's a lot of water, water becomes very cheap, right? You can go to your local supermarket and buy a water for around $1. But when water is scarce, right? When people don't have water, you would pay a lot for it. If you were out in the desert and you were dying of thirst and you had a fancy gold watch on, you would trade that gold watch for a bottle of water in a second like that, right? So water is something that maybe we take for granted, especially here in the West, because we have access to clean drinking water and fresh water, but in many parts of the world, they don't have access to fresh water. There are signs that we could be running into problems when it comes to the supply of fresh water and that this asset could become scarce. And for that reason, it could become very valuable and you may want to have some exposure to this asset. Now, the thing about water is that there is a lot of it, right? The world is 70% water. And I think this is a main reason why people don't really worry too much about water scarcity or running out of fresh water. They see oceans all around us and they think, hey, we're fine, right? We've got a lot of water. And maybe that's a valid argument. But the thing about most of this water in the world is that it is mostly salt water. Let's go ahead and take a look at a little pie chart here, which shows the breakdown of water in the world. And as you can see, 97% of it is salt water, only 3% is fresh water, and only 1% of that fresh water is readily available. So we don't have a ton of fresh water. Now, when you consider the volume of water in the world, 1% of all water is still a lot of water, but we are starting to see parts of the world run into some problems, and many parts of the world have been dealing with problems when it comes to fresh water. According to the World Health Organization and UNICEF, 2.1 billion people lack access to safely managed drinking water, and that's as of 2024. And there are also between 502,000 and 3.4 million deaths every year related to unhealthy drinking water. Let's get into some of the reasons why we're seeing shortages when it comes to the fresh water supply. A major one is climate change. Now, I know there's a lot of stigma around climate change. A lot of people don't really think that humans are contributing to climate change, and I'm sure they have some valid arguments, and I'm not here to argue whether or not that's true, but the fact of the matter is when we do see temperatures rise, when we don't see rainfall, this affects the freshwater supply, right? When we're not getting rain, we're seeing the freshwater supply, we're not seeing it replenished, we're seeing it go down. And when we see these extreme heat waves and when we have this dry weather, it means that the water is evaporating. So that's why you see sometimes that reservoirs will be drying up, and that's something that we don't want to see, right? Really, we want to see rainfall. It means that our reservoirs fill up. It means that we have more access to fresh water. And it also means that we don't run into other problems like having these wildfires that we're seeing here on the West Coast in the United States. We can also think about the melting of glaciers and snowpacks. These glaciers and snowpacks kind of provide a steady flow of fresh water, and when it's really hot and these glaciers melt and these snowpacks melt, it means that that fresh water supply dissipates a little bit too fast and we don't get that constant flow, which is something that we don't want to see. We can also look at water pollution, and I think that water pollution is one of the main problems that we can prevent, right? We don't have to pollute our water. We can be smarter about how we manage our water, what we put in it, And really, there are a lot of problems when it comes to water pollution. A major one is agricultural runoff, which is responsible for about 70% of global water pollution. We can look at the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America now. I'm not sure which one it is now, but there's a dead zone there where basically marine wildlife, right, they can't live there because of all of this pollution due to agricultural fertilizer, manure, and urban runoff. So we really want to prevent this, right? We don't want to see our water polluted. Another major issue is microplastics, right? I think everyone has become familiar with this term in the past couple of years because people have been talking about it. Now, I'm not sure exactly how accurate all the data is when it comes to microplastics, but according to what I saw, microplastics have been detected in 93% of bottled water, which makes sense because it's bottled in a plastic bottle, and then it's been detected in 80% of major city tap water. So I personally don't drink a lot of tap water, even though I'm in a great place for tap water, just because I'm not sure how much I trust the system, right? The water system, and just the fact that there is so much water pollution out there. According to what I saw online, around 1.7 billion people drink water that's contaminated with fecal matter. I'm sure that's a major contributor to all these deaths that we see related to drinking water. And around 300 to 400 million tons of industrial waste are dumped into bodies of water annually. So water pollution is a huge problem, and I think that this is something we can control, right? Maybe we can control climate change, maybe we can't. I think that's still up for debate, but I definitely know we don't have to pollute our water, and we can take better care of it. I think this is something we are going to have to focus on more as a global society, especially if we see this freshwater supply going down. Another reason why we're seeing freshwater shortages is that we just need to manage our water better. We're seeing excessive withdrawal for agriculture and industry, and we really have inefficient infrastructure when it comes to our water management in many parts of the world. So I think this is something we can work on. We can become more efficient when it comes to distributing water, and we can just be smarter, right? And how we allocate water and how we treat it, right? This is a resource that we really need, so we shouldn't be wasting it. Now let's talk about investing in water. Personally, I'm not invested in water, and this is not financial advice. I'm really only invested in one asset pretty much, and I bet you can guess what that is based on the channel name, but I did do some research into water investments, and here's what I found. For one, I think that a great way to invest in water is to invest in desalination, right? We talked about that pie chart earlier and the fact that 97.5% of the world is saltwater. So if we do run into issues with the freshwater supply and we have all this salt water out there and we're able to turn this salt water into fresh water, right, into drinking water, and this is something that people need, then I think that's something we're probably going to turn to in the future. Now, I'm not sure how much we are going to rely on desalination, but if we do see the freshwater supply go down, I think that this is a very viable option. So I definitely think we could see the demand for desalination increase. And when I was looking at companies doing desalination, there was one that kind of stuck out, and that is Consolidated Water Company. Now, this is a smaller company relative to other water companies out there. A lot of these other water companies I saw were in the billions of dollars when it comes to the market cap. And what I like about Consolidated Water Co. is that they are relatively small and they have a lot of upside, and they've seen some good growth and some good appreciation in their stock in recent years. So let's go ahead and take a look at a chart of Consolidated Water Co. over the past 5 years, and it is up around 180, 190%. And they are seeing growth. They have 11 desalination plants. They're expanding to the US, I believe in Hawaii. And yeah, I just think that maybe a company at a market cap that's around 518 million. And if we could see a boost in demand for desalination, I think that this company could see a lot of upside and some good returns. So this is just one company that stuck out to me. Another way to invest in water is to invest in farmland in high precipitation areas, right? In these areas where we see a lot of rain. And I actually read that Michael Burry, the Big Short investor, is doing this. He thinks that this is a bet on the future value of water, and it makes sense, right? If you can buy land in these areas where you do see a lot of rainfall, you're going to benefit from that, right? Where other areas around the world maybe aren't getting as much precipitation or aren't getting as much access to fresh water. And the great thing about farmland is that it's a real asset, right? We all talk about investing in these paper assets, and that's great for building wealth. But by investing in farmland, if you can grow crops on it, if you can raise livestock on it, you can sustain yourself and live and really profit, right? If you see a lot of demand for that in your local community. So I do think that farmland is a great investment, and I just love that it is a real asset, right? I think that real assets are great. The last option I want to mention are water ETFs. And again, this is not financial advice. I'm not saying you should go off and buy a water ETF. And to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the equities market in general right now. I just think that it's probably overvalued. But the thing about water ETFs is that they are a great way to get exposure to multiple water companies, right? All these water companies that are trying to do innovative things and find ways to save water or find ways to, produce more fresh water, like desalination companies. You can get access to a lot of them through an ETF. So some of the more popular water ETFs out there are First Trust Water ETF, Invesco's Water Resources ETF, and the Global X Clean Water ETF. There are many out there. So if you're looking to get exposure to water, maybe this is a good way to do it if you're not exactly sure which individual companies are going to come out on top. So water is a very valuable resource. It's something we're always going to need, and I think it's something we should not take for granted. I'm going to be keeping my eye on the freshwater supply as we move into the future because I know that I'm going to need it. I think as a global society, we should try not to pollute our water if we can, and we should try to find ways to be more efficient. Just because we need this resource to live, right? And I do think that if we do run into water scarcity, there are going to be some good investment opportunities. That's going to wrap it up for this one. If you didn't like and subscribe, please make sure to do that now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.